Hi, this is Deanna from Something Wicked. I'm here today to bring you a how-to video on how to make container candles. First thing you're going to need is a container for your candle. Today I'll be using Kerr brand pint-size normal mouth jars. You can normally get them in a 12-pack for about $10 at Walmart. Normally I use the Kerr brand jelly jars, the quilted jelly jars, but they happen to be out of them today, so I had to get pint-sized jars. Next thing you're going to need are wicks. I get mine from the Flaming Candle Company, which is an Etsy shop, link down below. For a pint-sized jar, you're normally going to want a medium-sized wick if you're using wood wicks. Obviously, it doesn't matter if you're using string wicks, because they're pretty standard size. And the medium wick from Flaming Candle Company is about ½ an inch. Next thing you're going to want is something to stir your wax with. I use a wooden spoon, which probably isn't recommended, but I don't have a nice plastic spoon that won't melt, and I don't have a metal spoon. This spoon obviously won't get hot at the end, but it does tend to absorb some of the scent, so I really have to scrub it hard when I'm done with one scent. Next thing you're going to need, if you decide to dye your candle or color it, you're going to want liquid or dye chips. Liquid dye or dye chips. I get mine from Etsy, once again, link in the description. Today I'll be using these diamond-shaped red dye chips. Makes a really nice red color. Next thing you're going to need is a scent, if you decide to scent your candle, once again. I get mine from thecandlemakerstore.com, and today I'll be using chocolate chip cookie. Last thing you're going to need is a double boiler setup. So this. I have a pot with some water in it, and I have a wax pourer. If you don't have one of these, you can just use a glass bowl. Obviously not a plastic bowl because it'll melt. This is preferred because it has a little divot to help you pour the wax out, because most bowls have don't have a little divot in it, so the wax will kind of go up the bowl. And the reason that you want a double boiler is because you want the wax to melt evenly. Oh, duh. You also need wax. I use Golden brand 464 wax. The reason I like 464 wax is because it has a good scent throw, which means that once you light the candle, the scent really is pungent, and it kind of, it spreads through the air a little quicker. Your other options include waxes that help prevent frosting. I have a candle right here that actually got frosted. It's just my little testing candle that I pour extra wax in. But if you can see, there's this little white area up here that's frosting. That happens when the wax dries irregularly, or it just doesn't dry right. And it's something that you want to avoid if you want a professional looking candle. The reason I go for scent throw over frosting prevention is because I can normally fix frosting with a little bit of a hairdryer, because it'll melt it so it can reset properly. If you're looking for something to prevent frosting, you might want to try a wax other than 464. You can use paraffin wax, which I'm pretty sure doesn't frost as easily. It also takes color a little bit better, but I prefer soy wax because it's a little more natural than paraffin. One thing I forgot to mention is that a scale comes in handy really well. I have a sharper image scale. It measures in pounds and ounces or grams. I prefer grams. It helps you to make more consistent wax levels for your candle, because if you don't know how much wax you need, it's going to be difficult to kind of guesstimate how much wax you're going to need for one candle. The way I figure out how much wax I need is I used one of my already finished candles, which I'm sure there's a better way to do it if you just want to start right off the bat. I'm sure there's calculations somewhere online that'll show you how much dry wax you need to melt in order to fill up a candle. But I just used one that I had already made that came out to a really good level that I like. And then I found an empty jar of the same type. I put this jar, the full jar, on the scale and measured it. And then I measured the empty jar with, both with the lids, so that the only difference is the soy wax inside. And then I subtracted the amount of the the jar, off of the full jar. And I figured out how much I need to put into, how much wax I need to melt in order to fill up the candle to this height. So I just measured out my wax. I need about 350 grams to get to the level that I want on my candle. And that ends up being about 3 1-cup scoops of wax. So I put 6 because I'm making 2 candles. So I'm going to put this on my double boiler. And to prevent the wax from clumping, I really like to stir constantly. Otherwise you get really big clumps and it doesn't make it very fun because you have to wait for those big clumps to dissolve into the wax. This is actually my first time using the wax pourer in my double boiler instead of just a bowl. So we might have some trial and error here, so hold with me. Alright, so for this candle, I'm going to need a lot of color because I want it to be really red. So I'm going to put 4 of my dye chips in there. In order for these to melt properly, I like to push them against the side of the double boiler and melt them. Alright, so all my wax is melted now. I know it kind of looks like a murder scene. But I'm going to remove my wax pourer from heat. And I'm going to wait about 5 minutes before I put any scent in, just because I don't want the scent to evaporate immediately. Alright, so I waited a couple minutes, now I'm going to put my scent in. Just going to open this up, pour it in. Oh, that smells amazing. Okay. Now I'm going to make sure that I stir it in pretty well, because you don't want an uneven scent to your candle. Then, I'm going to open up one of my jars here. For string wick candles, you're going to want to use a wick placer to keep your wick in place while you pour it, because it's a little harder to kind of stick it in after you've poured your wax, because it's string. Wooden wicks, you can pretty much do whatever with. You can have something hold it in place, or if you want to make it easier, you can just stick it in afterwards. That's what I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my spoon, put that in the sink so I can wash it. Then I'm going to pour my wax into my candle. Beautiful red color. Until about the level that I want it at. Perfect. Set that one aside. Alright, I have a little bit left, so I'm just going to even these out a little bit. Don't want to waste any of this beautiful scent that I have here. Perfect. Alright. And what I'm going to do while this wax is still wet, I am going to put it in the sink and wash it, because if I leave it dry, then I have to wait for it to melt again to scrape it out, and it's just a bad time. So I'm going to put this immediately under hot water in the sink so that I can wash that out before the scent kind of tends to stick to the pourer. Next thing I'm going to do is put in my wicks, and then what I'm going to do is stick this in here, and then I'm going to tap the bubbles out of the holder so that I don't get any bubbles in my candle. Okay. If you want this to stay without drifting, normally you can wait about 5 minutes when the bottom wax starts to dry, but I'm impatient, so okay. Now because my wicks are just a little bit too long, I'm going to trim this one. Woo! Alright. Flying wicks. Careful. Oh, it's drifting. So I'm just going to try and place it right in the middle. Stay. Maybe I should have waited, right? To be honest, the wax pourer that I used this time got the wax a lot hotter than my bowl normally does. So I think that's why it's having such a big problem sticking. Alright, well, looks like this one isn't actually going to stay. So I'm going to wait a couple minutes like I should have initially for some of the bottom wax to start hardening before I put that wick in there. Alright, I now have my wick in the center like it should be. Right there. And it's actually staying like it should be. My last notes are going to be, if you're a beginner, I would definitely use a glass bowl instead of a pourer for your first couple times, because you can tell where the unmelted bits of wax are if you're using die chips, you can tell where the unmelted bits of wax chip are. And if you don't have a terribly long spoon like I do, it was kind of hard to mix that without hurting my hand because it was so hot. It also made the wax really hot, so it melted, like the rest of it melted really quick, and I had some big chunks left, which I don't really like. And I had to wait longer to put my wick in. So if you're a beginner, I would use a glass bowl and just kind of use a ladle maybe to put your wax into your candles. But if you want to make a large volume of candles, it's obvious that you need a wax pourer like that, because it would take forever to ladle in all of that wax into your candles. It's easier just to pour it. Alright, that's it for my how-to video. If you have any questions, comment down below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.